Welcome, everyone, to the Captive Audience. It is the 21st of July. We are surging through the summer. It's a nice, warm summer, although it got a little bit cooler in the last few days compared to what it's been. But we have a hot guest here with us tonight. We have Representative Boomer Wright of District 9, Coos Bay, and we're so lucky to have you here with us this evening, Representative Wright. Thank you, and welcome to the show.
No, it's good to be here, Kevin. Good to see you. Yeah, we've had a heat wave over here at the coast. It got up to 68 the other day. We were just sweating.
It's a sweltering 68 degrees.
Yeah, and that's also the wind speed too.
That's the wind speed. Yeah. So if you were worried about whether it was going to feel too hot, maybe
Come to
not.
the coast. Just understand that I always say that the temperature in Eugene is the wind speed in Florence. So
yeah, that's right. Well, and so your district, why don't we tell folks where your district is located, because folks all over the state watch this show, and yet some folks might not even realize that they're in your district, and they just would like to know, okay, and what kind of populations and cities you have in your district.
Well, my district runs from Coos Bay, North Bend, up through Lakeside and Reedsport and Dune City, Florence, and then moves inland to small communities like Walton, Notai, Lorraine, Crow, Triangle Lake, Mapleton, parts of Veneta, Elmira. That's kind of my district in total.
So the heart of it is kind of population-wise is Coos Bay, North Bend, Florence, right?
Right, correct.
So you really have the coastal districts. You have those issues front and center in everything that's going on but of course many of the same issues that you have across the rest of the state too. That just a version that affects the towns, and I think I got familiar with it during the Monique Despain's congressional campaign last year, and it was pretty clear that some of the problems might be actually more intense on the coast than to some of the bigger cities inland and further north, such as housing, especially workforce housing.
Absolutely. I mean, the coastal economy is based on a three-legged stool, and basically that is fishing, timber, and tourism. And we all know what happened to
Timber.
logging and timber and forest management, which is pathetic as far as I'm concerned. Used to be the timber capital of the world, and we're not that anymore for sure.
Yeah.
Lots of jobs, families, young families left, and devastated the coast because of the spotted owl controversy, and continues to go on, whether that it's the spotted owl or whether it's the Humboldt martin or the furry beetle, or I mean, you name it. The environmental groups want to basically have a crisis here in the coast. I mean, it's very evident they prefer this to be a state park from Brookings to Astoria, and unfortunately, we don't want that to happen.
No.
This is an amazing place for people to live, and we work on that. The fishing industry is struggling. I think that's partly due to mismanagement by the Oregon Fish and Wildlife Service. I think they can do a better job. I had a bill talking about abundance, and that's what we should be doing. I'm very thankful to the Coquille tribe for coming in, particularly down on the Coquille River, and setting up some new hatchery type things, and has brought back the Chinook fish to that area. So I'm thankful for that, and I think that we'll see more coordination and partnership with like the CT Clusie tribe, which is the Siuslaw, Lower Coos, and those and maybe even up to the Siletz tribes and those kinds of things. I think they're going to get involved. Cow Creek's involved. Of course, Umatilla involved, and making some great strides in bringing back our fisheries. So I'm very thankful for that. But and then of course tourism, which is I think our major focus here. And unfortunately, we're looking at some closures of dunes, which is going to hurt our economy. We're pretty resilient people here on the coast. We have to be because we're a long way from Salem. And so we've decided a long time ago that if we're going to actually accomplish much, we're going to have to do it ourselves. So we have pretty resilient people working hard and creating new businesses, small businesses up and down the coast. And I'm very thankful for that. I've got a work group coming up on Monday for a variety of people in my district to talk about infrastructure, which is a biggie. If we go places like Mapleton, which we just work very hard to get some water resources there. They've been struggling. They've got lines, sewer lines, and water lines that are ancient. North Bend, they've got some water and sewer lines that are 80 years old, and so we have that up and down the coast. And so I'm going to get together with the various business managers and mayors and people who run infrastructure and our district for our municipalities and put together something that we can show the governor that says this is a priority for the coast, but I would more than guess that it's a priority for the entire state.
Yeah.
That we've got infrastructure, not only our roads, but for our municipalities and small areas pretty much fend for themselves with their own water systems and sewer systems in each individual home. But our municipalities are struggling, and they will continue to struggle. So until we make that a priority, I think that's going to continue to be a problem. You mentioned the port earlier, and it's progressing, slow but sure. There's a lot of obstacles. The state of Oregon, along with the feds, put a lot of obstacles in the way of most everything you want to do.
Yeah.
Anyway, it seems like we did get $100 million from the state of Oregon down in Coos Bay to start the dredging process and get that underway. So that then the next step then is the intermodal port and start building that. So slow but sure. I think it will get there. I've been impressed with the support in talking with our representatives in Congress. They're saying that President Trump is serious about this and very supportive of the port. So I think we'll continue to grow. This will be a catalyst for not only the coast, but inland too, where the container shipping goes in, and as a major port between San Francisco and of course Portland. So I think it's going to take a little time, but I think there are lots of people who are extremely supportive, and so I think it will happen.
As I understand it, the Port of Coos Bay is an entire day closer in terms of travel by ship to Asia than Long Beach, which is the largest port, I think, in the United States. And I remember I actually came down years ago for a documentary where I was just sort of the person asking questions. And the documentary is called Beyond the Oregon Myth. And it was, I talked with, I'm trying to remember their names, the Souses.
Yes.
And talked with them about the port and what they were trying to do back then, which was Jordan Cove. And the history of it was, it used to be probably one of the most well-to-do areas of the state, maybe uh, pretty high up nationally. The things were well funded, and they shipped a lot of the timber out of there that built Southern California.
Yeah. Huge.
Um, huge amounts, and of course that's when we were a timber exporter, and of course then the port over the years needs the dredging and the maintenance, and the ships get bigger, so sometimes they need to widen that, right? But I was surprised to see that, it was such a vibrant place, and then what had happened to it over several decades, when timber was euthanized.
Yeah,
uh, in,
that's a good word for it.
yeah, in favor of a spotted owl that wasn't even endangered by the timber industry. It was endangered by the barred owl, which they go out and regularly shoot.
Yeah, and the bird was imported. On top of that, it's not a native species to Oregon. It was imported in, and now, of course, the barn owls are coming in and eating
Yeah.
the spotted owl, and so now the U.S. Forest Service, excuse me, U.S. Fish and Wildlife want to kill like 400,000 barn owls, to protect the spotted owl.
Like
I mean,
DEI for owls,
the
huh?
ridiculous of this is continuing on, and you see, there's always unintended consequences, and of course, I'm not necessarily supportive of our nonprofit for profit environmental
Yeah.
organizations
Yes.
at all, and to think there's always unintended consequences. So we come in and we protect the species. Okay, I understand that. In doing that, you close down the forest, and now we have problems with forest fires, those kinds of things. Recreation, they're closing areas that people can't get in, so they can't recreate. We can't log like the Elliott Forest, which I put forth a bill to move it back to in control of Coos County and Douglas County,
Yeah.
and there's a possibility of over 80 million board feet a year sustainably, and
Wow.
they're only allowing 17. And so what happens then is, of course, we were pretty self-sufficient here in our schools funding, in our public service funding, our cities and county funding for jails and public, public safety, all those kinds of things. And so now we don't have that. And so now we have to raise taxes to fund those things that we could fund ourselves.
Yeah.
So what we end up doing is shooting ourselves in the foot.
Yeah.
There's a better way to do this, and until the gridlock at the state level with our environmental groups against the forestry groups, until there's a better compromise for people and animals, we're going to continue to suffer down in our area.
The spotted owl must have a giant pack that spotted owls all donate through, because it's amazing how influential they are, more than people
Yeah.
that actually live there.
Well, if the environmental groups don't have a crisis, they can't get donations. So
That's right.
So it's a self-perpetuation.
Well, and then the way they do it, right, is they use the legal system to slow down anything they don't want, and essentially kill off any nascent attempts at reform. Now, I've been hearing a lot from the federal level, and I know a lot of federal land. I don't know what percentage may be in your district, but statewide, it's like 60% is federally managed or controlled land. And if there's a new attitude coming out of Washington, D.C. with the Trump administration, maybe there's some hope that some of this could start to change. Is there any optimism? Do you feel any of that?
Yes, yeah, I do. The information that I have coming down from the feds is that they're going to start opening up things, and I think that's a real positive. We need to do that. It's what's ridiculous is that we're barging in logs from Canada, and then in the Port of Coos Bay, we're moving logs there and sending the logs to Japan, Asia, those kinds of things. Yeah, I mean, we've lost 7 mills, more mills this last couple of years. It continues to deteriorate as far as those kinds of things. And we have more trees here in Oregon than we've ever had.
Yeah.
Uh, and
I hear
we've
you
got
can grow new ones, by the way.
more restrictions and laws and regulations. I mean, Lord help us. Uh, we're probably the most regular logging and timber harvest is one of the most regulated areas profession that there are, and when we continue to do more and more, when we have a sustainable resource that could make Oregon economically sound. And right now, we really need that. We for the first time ever since 2009, our revenue forecast came in $500 million less than what they projected.
Wow. Yeah.
And which really caused some problems, particularly for ODOT. And I'm sure we're going to get in and talk about that. But that was huge. And we have businesses leaving right and left, and families leaving because of our tax structure. We have one of the highest tax income taxes and cat taxes and all those kinds of things.
And it's the most frightening place to die, I heard too.
Well, yeah, and of course we have an estate tax, which I'm not sure of the percentage right now. I did have a bill that basically said that we need to get rid of it. Just get rid of the death tax. That we pay taxes on our whole life on our property and our the things that we have. There's no reason that the state deserves more money at the end when it can be given as a process of wealth for our kids.
Yeah.
To help them, and they sure need help now.
Yeah, we should be encouraging savings, and we shouldn't be taxing income twice, which is what that does, right? And actually, generational wealth, especially when people build it up through small businesses, farms, all these types of things, even timberlands, it really contributes to stability, the ability of the education system to have a proper funding mechanism. When everything's tied up in federal lands, they don't pay any property tax, right? And of course, in your on your website here, in your bio, it talks about you were a teacher for decades, 31 years, third through sixth, and also were involved with the Mapleton School District and as well as Susla and Reedsport, and so you kind of know that whole thing that we keep hearing. Everybody in Salem says, "Well, this is so important. We got to make sure there's funding for education." There could be loads of it if we just leveraged our own resources here, right?
Well, the concept is how you use the money. Um, our forefathers basically said government should never do for people what they can do themselves.
Yeah.
Okay, so the idea is that government is only there to support what people want to do. They're not there to create all these amazing programs and increase the state budget in one decade double to hundreds, well, not hundreds, but many billions of dollars going to not necessarily bad things, but the concept is government can't do everything, and it shouldn't.
Yeah, it's not particularly good at many things.
It shouldn't try to do everything. Again, the concept is that I've always felt like for education, and we're bottom of the barrel test wise anyway. Yeah. I think we've made some improvements, so I'm looking forward to seeing some things happen in just the next few years. I mean, we've had some examples like Mississippi and Louisiana and Florida doing some things that have raised the standards, and they were bottom of the barrel. And now I think we're going to get there. But the key is that the money needs to go to the classroom and in supporting the teacher, and instead of the state government saying, well, we need to do this, we need to go into the classrooms and we need to say, what do you need? What
Yeah.
is it that we're not doing, and how do we help our teachers and our classified staff and our administrators and our school boards to do a better job? And
Yep.
and that's what we're not doing. We seem to think that a top down is the way to go, but it's never worked.
Yeah.
So I mean, this is that cycle that basically says, we continue to do it, and that's the kind of a sign of insanity for what we're doing. So
Yeah, repeating the same thing and expecting a different result. But it's also true,
exactly.
isn't it, that the number of administrators, particularly of these programs that you were mentioning, that they generate in the Department of Education, and then they just start requiring everywhere. If they were measured by how much they actually help someone read at grade level, quite many of these programs would be gone instantly, wouldn't they?
Well, absolutely, and the concept again, for the Oregon Department of Education, is they need to get off their duff and get into the classrooms, get into the schools. We don't need 650 people who are sitting up approximately up there in Salem, dictating to the schools what they're supposed to be doing without actually getting into the school. And I said, well, how many people in the Oregon Department of Education are actually teachers? And probably about half. And the rest of them do administrative things and those kinds of that. And I'm not saying we don't need that, but what I'm saying is that we need to get out in the classroom and be helping teachers get the skills they need to be able to help our students. I read something the other day that probably education is the one profession that is not research based.
Yeah.
We're getting there. I was honored to serve on the governor's council on literacy K-5, and we came up with some standards for teacher prep schools, the 11 here that are in the state. And by 2027, then there's some standards that are going to be required of our professors to make sure that they give our new teachers coming out certain skills, including handwriting, cursive, those kinds of things, the basics that are going to help. But this is more focused on literacy. But I think that that's going to be a real plus down the road. And then through our local ESDs, then to be able to get into the schools and basically teach our teachers how to teach the science of reading to our kids, and so that everybody's kind of doing the same things. That's research based, and it's working across the country. There's no reason why we shouldn't be doing those things in math, science, social studies, the rest of them.
There's been a lot of experiments on kids in the education system that have not been research based, right? They've been sort of fads, and they've harmed our ability to get that done. And it's so obvious, isn't it, that if you're going to make a difference, shouldn't it be forward deployed into the closest to where you're supposed to be make the impact, and not top heavy and far away, which doesn't sound like an education thing. It sounds like a bureaucracy. And I don't know how many bureaucracies they're talking about in the federal level. They're saying no one's being taught anything out of the Department of Education at the federal level. So let's just take that money and block grant it to the states and get it a little bit closer to where it can make a difference. And some people's like, no, you can't do that. We have to have an education department. And it's like, well, actually, why don't you just have education? It's like, it is common sense, isn't it?
Well, exactly. Where it's happening, and I'll always say that it's in the classroom. That's where it happens. And thank God for our teachers who understand that the gobbledygook that comes down from the state is not necessarily what they do in the classroom, because they know it doesn't work. Now, having said that, we want to make sure that our teachers, number one, have the skills to do whatever they need to do for whatever level they're at. They need to have the support and materials to be able to give the kids, the practice and what they need. And they need the instructional time to be sacred in the classroom. You can't, kids learn in a certain way, and the teacher teaches them in a certain length of time the skills. And if it's continued to be interrupted,
Yeah.
whether that's by the office
Discipline issues.
walking in or kids being disruptive and those kinds of things, it's not conducive. I've always said that every child has the right to a public education, but no child or other person has the right to interfere with the other children's right to learn.
Yeah, it seems basic.
You would think so.
Yeah. Well, actually, Nicholas Middleton, one of our viewers here, said teachers and parents need to be empowered to enforce these rules. And a lot of the time, there seems to be a lot of programs that are doing the opposite. They're trying to interfere with the ability of both teachers and parents to make sure that classroom environment exists, that the students need, that uninterrupted, focused time. Which, by the way, doesn't it teach kids how to understand, respect, function, and conform in a society to norms and behaviors? It goes beyond just like learning the material in the classroom. You learn how to be a productive person and to respect others. And it seems like sometimes there's just not been a priority on that. The Eugene 4J school district, I know tons of stories from that. And it just seems like they have the opposite approach at times. They're like, nope, we don't care we care about whether or not people get to express themselves in the classroom. I'm like, well, not at the expense of all the other students in that classroom.
Exactly. I mean, unless there's order in the classroom, you can't teach. Okay, and our teachers need support in there. I was mentioning, I won't mention the school district, but I was talking to them about discipline, and of course my bill on instructional time, which basically says that that if a child is disrupting the class, for instance, like a couple times a month, that they have to clear the class. Okay, so that not only disrupts the learning environment for that group, but where do those kids go? Do they go to the classroom next door while the teacher tries to get it? And then who monitors all that? I mean, it's just a big fiasco that we can't allow. So if that's going to happen a couple of times, then that child needs to be removed from the classroom and sent someplace where they get their needs met. So then they can be taught to be able to handle themselves back in the classroom. But in this one situation, they had so many. They had like a tier 1, tier 2, and a tier 3 as far as discipline, and they had these rooms where the kids could go, cool down, calm down, get some instruction, and then the teacher could talk with them later, and maybe they could come back, or they got more instruction. But the tier 3 kids, what was happening is there were so many of them that they were feeding off each other, and it became a room of chaos. So you almost need to have another way to do that, to move kids someplace where you can hopefully meet their needs discipline wise and help them to want to learn, to enjoy learning.
Yeah, I think there was a concern when they took the educational standards, particularly for graduation, and kind of did away with them temporarily during COVID. And a lot of people thought, well, actually, that's probably not what you're not going to get to more qualified high school graduates by saying, we don't care if they qualify, just get them out of here. And I'm pretty sure colleges knew that was happening.
If you don't have standards, you don't have standards. That's the simple thing. I mean, and we're talking about outcomes, because if we don't do that, then we're failing our kids, because then they don't have the skills when they graduate. And so what happens is that for unfortunately, and in my opinion, our graduation diplomas have become participation awards.
Yeah, trophies. Yeah.
Not, and so our businesses are going, what does this mean? This kid has a diploma, but what does this mean to my business? Can they speak? Can they write clearly? Can they do the necessary skills for my business so that I can prosper and that I can provide them a job? So it we this not bill, but this regulation that they came up with, this rules, excuse me, concerning not having a standard is going through 27, 28. It's when it finally will go away, and they're going to have to come back and figure out standards that kids are supposed to have when they graduate. We underestimate our kids. They're very bright. I
Yeah.
mean, if you get in the schools at all, they're bright kids, and all they need is a little push, a little a
Some
little
direction.
yeah, a little direction, a little positiveness. As far as I've always believed that you can't give them self-esteem. They have to earn that, and so
Yeah,
that
it's actually earned by overcoming and doing difficult things and
yeah.
succeeding, right?
Yeah, and this we've got to set them up for the real world. When I was the principal at Rhododendron Elementary School, I really harped on my teachers about all these stickers, and I said, I don't mind you giving rewards to kids, but they have to earn. It's not just a participation award.
Yeah.
If you're going to award somebody, that needs to mean something, because if you just give it to everybody, it loses the meaning,
Yeah.
and doesn't mean anything to them. So the next thing you have to do is give them 3 times as many stickers, because they don't know what that means.
Yeah.
And so I mean, we can go back 3 decades with whole language and those kinds of things that were in our schools, where children were supposed to be immersed in books and learning and those kinds of things, and then through osmosis they learn how to read. Well, duh, didn't work, did it?
Didn't
Hasn't
know.
worked. And so now we're having to go back to phonics and those kinds of things that have worked
Yeah.
in the past.
It's what I had.
And that's not 100%. Some kids sight read. Some kids, are audio type learners, and they'll learn through that. But for the most part, you've got to have the foundation of what sounds are and what words are to be able to read and be successful. If kids by third grade aren't able to read, they're going to be struggling probably the rest of their life.
Yeah, the statement I heard that really struck me, because it's so basic and so simple, but you can't screw up reading, because you learn to read because you need to read to learn. And that even means to be able to read your math book and do a word problem, you better be able to read. And so that's how fundamental it is. And when that doesn't get done well, it's very unfortunate. Now, one of our super fans here, Pam, said that she worked in the Hillsborough School District as a classified. I don't know what role that is, but I'm sure you probably do. And I've seen what the problems are. Nobody has the guts to fix it. And I know that futility sets in with folks sometimes, well-intentioned, concerned people, and they're like, this is impossible to fix. Nobody wants to fix it. And so, and I think that I would expand that beyond just education, because sometimes within, say, a state government bureaucracy, there's a lot of really good people that want to do something. They want to do the right thing, and they don't get to do it because the system actually works against it or discourages it. And what is your sense of things now? Because we've got a pretty large state government. It's really grown, both in terms of money and in terms of personnel. And yet, when I see, we're spending 60% more on transportation, I don't think the roads are 60% better. And if we got to do it. We just did another 11% increase in the education budget. Biennium on biennium, this is a significant increase. If you go back, say, 10 years, that percentage increase in budget doesn't seem to relate to commensurate percentage increase in performance. In fact, hasn't it gone down? So everybody just says, well, Boomer, we need more money for everything. And it's like, but there's good people that are saying, actually, it's really hard to get anything done around here.
Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, it's like, education is the mirror of our society, and so when things don't work there, it basically shows that it's not working in other places either.
Yeah.
The concept is that we don't honor outcomes. It's like, well, it's more feelings. I feel like we should do this for kids, and I feel like we should do this over here and this over there. No, 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 no. Okay, tell me what you're going to accomplish, and then tell me what you need to get there, and I'll be happy to help fund those programs. But in the end, I'm going to monitor that,
Yeah.
and when you do that, then if you need more money, fine. But if not, then you can forget it. Okay, so let me give an example. I was, let's just put it this way. I was not appreciated in my budget committee for education when I started talking about DEI, and
Yeah.
you know what that is, I'm assuming.
Yep.
And it's not that I'm against DEI. It's that what's the outcome? We have a regular education system, and then we have a special another system for our underprivileged and our BIPOC students to do, and we're putting in if I remember right, the Department of Education has a department, $12 million that they spend yearly for DEI.
Wow.
Higher education has about the same thing, and I'm saying, if we have two systems to help our BIPOC kids and our lower get where they need to be, how come it's not working?
Yeah.
How come our BIPOC community? How come our kids who are underprivileged are kids that have come into this country as immigrants or whatever? How come they're not doing better? Shouldn't they be doing better than the regular kids?
Because it's the extra
They're
attention.
getting extra help. They're getting a focus on making sure, but they're not doing. So I'm saying, is there a better way to do this? Because this system is not working. Just as you said, just piling on more money doesn't solve the problem. It just expands the problem, as far as I'm concerned.
Well, and sometimes it even grows bureaucracies that then you can't get rid of them. They don't even help, but they soak up money. And then somebody's like, well, we don't have enough money for, X, Y, and Z. Well, we're spending 12 million of it on this department that apparently isn't delivering better educated BIPOC students. And
they don't seem to be doing any better than anybody else.
Yeah.
I read something the other day that says, once power is in control, it settles and it grows.
Yeah.
So what we have is that we have a party that's in control of the Senate and the House. It's in control of the governorship, and the governor appoints judges. She appoints heads of departments and agencies, if not the agency head themselves. So we have a one-party system in the state with no checks and balances. So there's no oversight in this process. I would love. I wouldn't get anywhere, but I'd love to propose a bill that basically says there has to be an equal number of Republicans and an equal number of Democrats, and you can throw in some libertarians. You can throw in some constitutionalists and those kinds of things in there too. But that forces people to work together. I get tired of getting patted on the head and saying, "Boom, those are great ideas," but that's not where we're going. That's not our agenda for the state. And I keep saying, "Well, your agenda isn't working." I mean, tell me an agency that's doing what they're supposed to, that you can actually call and get help when you need. Name the agency, because I haven't found one yet.
Yeah. Yeah, well, they've had terrible results with many agencies who were simply supposed to deliver like unemployment benefits. I remember that whole fiasco. They couldn't actually it had tons of money and they couldn't get it to people. And it's like, well, what good are you, really? And it
Well,
took
then,
like 2 years to do anything about it.
and then of course, then unions are heavily in control in a variety of areas in our state. We just passed a law that gave teachers unemployment rights during strike, and you're
Benefit.
saying, you know, but like a lot of things, it's not. It was not funded. So where does that money come from to support our teachers and during a strike for their unemployment? I mean, where do we have to now have a budget line that for that? I mean, how much money do we put in a month to be able to do this so we have enough? If it's a long strike, could it actually defunct the school district?
Yeah, bankrupt it
Could
basically.
it bankrupt? And it says you can't bankrupt a school district, but if you don't have any money, then you don't have any money. So it's things like that number one, as I talk to parents, it comes down to a trust issue. Okay, and I've seen signs and strike to say it's all about the kids. Well, if it was all about the kids, we wouldn't be where we are today with where they are academically.
Yeah.
And I'm in discussions with the Oregon Education Association and saying, I hear what you're saying about making sure that our teachers get what they need and they're protected, but we also need to make sure that we're doing that for our children too. How do we get this concept that teachers are most important people in the classroom, but we also need to make sure that we're dealing with the children and the children are getting what they need, because right now they're not.
Yeah, technically they're in effect the customers, and the customers aren't getting what they need. And the parents who are really kind of the advocates and, or at least they do care about their kids, right? They're not happy. There seem to be just a lot of people really unhappy with this, and it doesn't line with the priorities very well. Now, you mentioned about oversight, about like, if I give you this money, then and you tell me what you're going to do, and it sounds like it's a worthy goal, and they tell you how they're going to do it credibly, and they get money for it, that there needs to be accountability, that you're going to watch and monitor and measure the results, because that's what the most important thing is. That seems to be at the heart of what happened in part with the transportation bill and the whole thing in the legislative session. And that, so I was thinking, like, we were talking about education, but I'm feeling like deja vu here, because that's what happened when you and the other members of the Republican caucus came forward and said, how about you do these things and don't raise taxes and just prioritize the things people really want? Because there's Representative Reschke told us last week that there's a department in ODOT that spends $28 million a year, and it's the DEI department. And it doesn't pave anything, it doesn't plow anything, it doesn't fix anything, and yet $28 million is not nothing. And then all this stuff that they say they're going to do, which, by the way, they've gotten money for before and they haven't done, like the Rose Quarter up in Portland, it's doubled in cost, and they've done absolutely nothing since they got the money in 2017. So people started asking, and you guys rightly asked, we need accountability systems, right? Wasn't there a building that had 2 floors, the Department of Transportation, that just had nobody in it, and they're paying a lease for that? They could, all this stuff, and then yet they're going to go to the hardworking people, which, as you mentioned, in your district, there's a lot of, you got tourism, the 3-legged stool, right? All 3 legs are struggling, and they're going to go and ask them for more money.
Yeah, yeah. Money isn't the issue. Spending is the issue.
Yeah.
Yeah, how you spend it. I mean, are we getting our money's worth? And that's a question we have to continue to think about, and that we're not there to make people feel good. We're there to help them do good.
Yeah. Well
That,
said.
that's a philosophical difference that we have in the legislature. That sometimes you have to make tough decisions, and somehow we're not wanting to make those decisions. We just give out more money and give out more money, and we think we're just benevolent and wonderful people in being able to do that. But the golden goose of taxpayers and businesses, if you keep at it and you keep burying them in taxes and regulations and rules, then they're going to leave, and they are,
They
and
are.
they can't prosper, and then you can't pay jobs. I'm not against having a minimum wage. I'm not against that, but I'll tell you what. When I go to breakfast and my wife and I, just have our ham and eggs and those kinds of things, and it's by the time I give a tip, it's $50. Some point, people who are struggling are going to say, I can't afford that.
Yeah.
They're not going to go. And then what happens, right? This minimum wage that we supposedly have to help people become, have better salaries and support themselves. Well, you've just talked to the businesses and said, you have to increase that. And then, of course, all the other things that they have to buy went up, like eggs and, those kinds of things. And you eventually put people out of business. I mean, Sherry's went out of business last year. There are
Yep.
other local businesses that are going out simply because people are not coming in because things are so expensive, and they're finally setting priorities and saying, I can eat better at home for much more reasonable. I can't afford to go out to these businesses anymore.
Yeah, cutting costs. And one of my favorite sayings from Margaret Thatcher was, "Socialism's great till you run out of other people's money." And it
Yeah.
seems like Oregon's been on a bit of a let's make everybody happy with money spending spree, but they were heavily reliant on a bunch of federal money that would come in here to augment that. And that's other people's money coming back to Oregon, and now it's drying up. And so now they have to make some choices. And that was sort of playing in the background, wasn't it? The whole time, the state legislative session, like, they're just going to go out and raise a tax. And it's like, maybe it's time we look at what we're spending.
Well, part of the first off, it's an attitude. Okay, the attitude of the legislature is all this tax money is our money, a legislator's money, a governor's money.
Yeah.
No, it's not. It's the taxpayers' money, and it's, as far as I'm concerned, it's a loan to us to use it wisely to benefit our people.
Yeah.
It's not for me to get reelected.
Yeah.
And that's what happened with the transportation bill. Instead of focusing on what the needs was, everybody wanted a little piece of this. We want a little piece of that. I want this.
Christmas tree.
I want to add this and I want to add that. And all of a sudden, it's $15 billion over 10 years instead of the $340 million that they actually needed.
Yeah.
And so, that's why they called one of the last bills we vote on the Christmas tree, because that's kind of what it is.
Yeah.
It's wishful thinking for what people want for their own districts, because it makes them look good. And we don't need to look good. We need to do good.
Exactly. That's such a great thing I'm going to remember that, actually. That's a great thing to repeat. And you had a newsletter here a few weeks ago, kind of towards the end of the session. And I really appreciated what you said, because in addition to informing people what was going on, what you felt like some of the successes, like you managed to stop some bad things. And when no one would compromise with you and the other members of your caucus, you didn't reward them by just letting them do whatever they want. And so they didn't end up passing these tax increases they wanted to pass. But also, it can be grueling, can it, to go through the 6 months of this session and kind of get run over. Your bills don't get hearings. They keep talking about how they're going to spend more money that they don't have, or they're going to have to take from someone else, that it will hurt those other people. And yet it was good that you highlighted the successes, like the repeal of the wildfire maps, killing some gun bills, preventing an enormous tax increase. But I liked what you said at the end, that it's been frustrating, irritating, challenging, a lot of hard work, both on and off the floor and committees. And you said, but I thank those of you who encourage me to never give up, never give in, never quit, and never surrender. We stayed, we fought, and we won. And I'm like, actually, that's something everybody needs to hear after going through such a sausage making process and getting the snot kicked out of you sometimes, right?
But that's a good comment. Yeah. I don't remember exact. I'm trying to think. I think it was Senator Girard when I first got to the Capitol. It was early. Nobody was there, but he said, "Boomer, come on up and let's talk." And so I went up there, and he said, "Now, Boomer, you're going to get frustrated, and you know, you're not going to like what's happening around you. Just remember, get mad, get over it." And it's the relationships that you have with people that will allow you to succeed, and that's the only way you can do this. And you can't burn your bridges. That person that you may not get along with and may totally disagree with may be the person on your next bill that you're going to need to help you move this forward, and may be very interested and supportive. So, you know, I lost my temper a couple times and stormed out of the Capitol, walked around a couple times, came back and said, "Boomer, get your head on straight," went back in and finished what I needed to finish. So yes, it is frustrating, but again, it's establishing relationships across the aisle that you can work together and bounce things off. It was it was much different this session. And I think Representative Mark Owens said it, and you got to have him on here, by the way. Basically said it best. This was a rudderless session. Normally, we have the major bills that are going to be controversial and take the most time at the first of the session, within the first 2 or 3 months. That didn't happen. Everything was pushed to the end.
Yep.
And as such, the tempers flared. We found out that between the Democratic moderates and the liberals, there was infighting, and though they couldn't come together on it. You know, some people wanted to spend $600 to $800 million on public transit and those kinds of things, like with the bridge and those kinds of things. And the other side said, "Hey, my district can't afford this."
Yeah.
And so there was no leadership. That, I mean, I don't always agree with our governor, and that's loosely stated.
Yes, yeah, that's you're being kind.
but she ran a tight ship. And,
when she was speaker,
as a speaker, she ran a tight ship, and she was able to bring people together. Our president and our Speaker of the House couldn't bring people together, and as such, it was like I said, it was rudderless, and there was no focus. It was like, you know, though she didn't say it in so many words, the Speaker of the House basically said, "It's my way or the highway." Well, Speaker, you didn't get your highway.
Yeah, you didn't get the highway either.
You didn't get the highway because you didn't work with us.
Yeah,
you didn't work with us. You didn't work with everybody. You didn't bring everybody together. And you know, and that's what government has to be. It has to be a group of people who may not agree on things, but can come together because it's the best thing for our constituents. It's the best things for Oregonians. And if we don't come together, then we don't share ideas. And many of the bills that we have, you know, somehow always call unintended consequences. I passed a bill, an unemployment bill, to try to help people who got a bit of the shaft during COVID when they got their unemployment rates frozen. And I finally got through the bill. It wasn't totally what I want, and it wasn't totally what what they wanted to give. But we came together and said, let's agree on this to help these people, these 1,100 businesses that basically did. And we came together and we did that. Took 4 years, but we got together and do it. And that's the kind of thing it takes. Things don't happen overnight if they work well. The things that happen quickly usually end up causing more problems.
Yeah, it seems like they kind of fumbled, waited too late, too long, played games, and then ended up the leadership, the speaker and the president were the victims of their own bumbling and fumbling in the end.
Yeah.
They didn't get what they said. And then they created a lot of consternation even within their own caucus. So I don't know, maybe they've learned something. What do you think, just looking forward? Two things. One is they're talking about a special session. It's going to be tough because it sounds like they got to line up their ducks in a row. Usually those things are a one-day pre-baked, prefabbed thing, right?
Yeah. Well, I have not heard anything other than people, little scuttlebutt here and there, and basically I think something will probably happen in September. I think that's what I hear. Nothing official yet, and I think that what's going to happen is that some proposal is going to come back and say, let's do a 6 cents gas tax that will provide the $340 million for ODOT to do what they need to do and get people back to work where they need to be. What bothers me a little bit is that the decision immediately the governor took to take our ODOT people and give them this pink slips. The biennium doesn't end till December.
Yeah, so it's still
there until December. So what this was a temper tantrum by our governor, to force us into a special session and those kinds of things. There's no reason these people need to be out of work. No reason.
No reason at all.
That's her. And she's going to force us into the session. So the deal is that usually that gas tax is divided up between the state and the counties and the cities, right? So if we do a 6% increase in gas tax, 3% will go to the state, 2% will go to the counties, 1% will go to the, or 1 cent will go to the cities. And so I don't like that either, but I don't think we have a choice. We want our roads taken care of. I have a road that goes from Mapleton to Triangle Lake, and it 36 they call it, and it is windy, a beautiful drive if you've never been up that way.
Yeah,
but it is windy, and if you don't have school buses go up there, if you don't have the center lines and you don't have the fog lines, it's dangerous.
Yeah.
So we have to do something. But like you said, maybe that $20-something million for DEI can be used more wisely someplace else.
Absolutely. What is your gut feel for the next year? 2026 is a political year. Do you feel like maybe the electorate is kind of starting to wake up to stuff, or is there anything coming that gives you a sense of optimism? Because your district's fairly conservative, although it was represented by Democrats for a long time.
Yeah.
But
it's
2026
more conservative than previous. Well, if I can be blunt, I think people need to wake up. I mean, obviously things aren't working in the state, and we need to do something different. We need new leadership. Because the leadership we've had over the last probably at least one decade has driven us down. I mean, if we're, I don't want to see the cycle of doom that they call it in Portland.
The doom loop. Yeah,
the doom loop. I don't want to see that throughout the state. We have amazing people. We need to take care of that. We need to take a look at what we're doing and figure out what's important. What is important to our people? Let's do that for a change instead of what's important to a particular party or a particular for
interest group.
We've got to do that, and people are going to have to stand up. It's just that simple. There was a bill last year that came through, and and people didn't like it, and they made phone calls and they wrote letters and they came to the Capitol and they marched around it, and people stood up and understood that this wasn't something that the people wanted. Until the people stand up and come
Demand
forward
it.
and
Yeah.
express their opinions strongly, nothing happens. I'm only effective as the people in my district who are behind me.
Yeah.
That's only effective I can be. And if they want something done and they're willing to support me and do those kinds of things, I can get things accomplished. But if it's just me, not much happens.
Well, I appreciate that you keep fighting the good fight, and as your constituents can encourage you, never give in and never give up and never surrender. But um, really appreciate you taking the time to talk with us here today, and tell us about the district and what's happening and what's happening in Salem, what you think is going to happen, because that's how we really get people behind you, is that they get informed and they know the truth. And I think we also like to have a little tongue in cheek here, because it's fun to laugh a little bit at some of the absurdities of politics, for sure.
Well, if you don't laugh, you cry.
That's right.
So you have to find the humor in things. Just back up a little bit, look at things. Common sense isn't as common as it used to be, and that's another statement I say occasionally to myself. And again, what's important to me are those letters that I get to say, hey, like somebody said here, thank you for all the work you do on our behalf, Boomer. Keep fighting. Those are the kinds of things that keep me going.
Yeah.
Those little notes, thank you notes in the mail, when kids come to visit and in my office, or people come to visit, that those things keep me going. And some days I really need that, and some days, somebody, since we know, and say, Boomer, I prayed for you this morning. Just want to make
Yeah.
sure that you do that. I mean, and that gives me strength to move on to the next thing that we have to do. So it's the people that keep me going, and that's why I'm here.
Well, I encourage them to do that, because you're a really fantastic representative. And we really appreciate you again taking this time today, and look forward to having you again on. And wish you all the best here and enjoying the summer as much as possible, but also looking forward to the battles to come, which they're going to come, especially with the political year coming up. So once again, Representative Wright, thank you for joining us here on the Captive Audience tonight.
My pleasure. Anytime.
And please, everyone, share this show with everyone you can, because there's a lot of folks who don't know this stuff. They don't know Representative Wright, and they should. And they should actually get out there and support him and the Republican team who are fighting this good fight in Salem for us. Thanks again. Have a great night, and we'll see you tomorrow night on the next episode of The Captive Audience. Have a good night.